Hey everybody, welcome to Fit Tip Tuesday. Today I'm continuing my series on demystifying top down center out as described by R. Collins in Threads Magazine article 218. During the time I worked with Ruth on this topic, there were some questions I had that were left unanswered, and I want to talk about one of those today. So I jokingly labeled one of the areas of the pants muslin and pattern of the basement. So today what I want to do is talk about when you have to go into the basement. And it is a fun little thing to say, but it's another thing that can cause some people to not be successful when they're trying to do top down center out using the 5 steps in the Threads article. So if you remember last week, we filled in the front crotch curve once we balanced the front and back leg and we couldn't lift the back up any higher. And I have it in front of me here just to remind you. I'm so excited I don't throw these things out anymore. I used to do my videos like my Fit Tip Tuesdays, and then I would clean up and throw away all my work that I did during the video, and now I realize I'm going to start cataloging them so I can use them in future videos if I need to, saving paper and fabric. So I'm pretty proud of myself. But as you can see here, this was the crotch that I drew, okay, and this was the result we got from filling in the crotch curve to get it to agree with your body. Now, one thing I forgot to tell you guys last week is there's a difference between creating a dart and picking up the curve versus filling in the curve. So let's rewind for 1 second here. What we're doing when we balance the front and back leg is we're balancing it to itself, meaning we've got our fitting waistband on, we have our single leg muslin on, and we are adjusting it from the waist, starting at center, front and back, like this, you know, to get the inseam to hang straight and also the hem parallel to the floor. Once we achieve that and we have a nice drape on the front and back leg, the pattern is balanced to itself. That does not mean it's balanced to you. Now, it's the pattern's job to fit you, not the other way around. So I don't want anyone to jump to the conclusion that, oh, there's something wrong with my figure because this pattern doesn't fit me, because it is totally the pattern's job to fit you. Now, interestingly, if you can pleat up or pick up the fabric as shown in the video last week, and I'll just unpin this here so I can show you again one more time, but if you pleat up the fabric like this to pick up the curve, look what you're doing. Notice, watch right here. Notice when I pleat it up, it picks up the fabric and brings it closer to the body. What are you doing? You're shortening your front rise. Okay? And that means if you can do this, pleat it and then go to 0 at the side seam, but also maintain the nice drape on the back leg, you had an additional amount of extra vertical length in the front that you could get rid of. Now, if you pleat it up and it messes up your back leg, that means the pattern is balanced and there is no more vertical length to pick up. So that means the crotch shape is not correct for you, because the crotch shape is disagreeing with you. So filling it in like I showed last week then basically recreates or reshapes that crotch curve so it then does agree with you. So I just wanted to circle around that and just talk about that one more time, because someone asked me a question about that, and I'm like, oh, she's asking me this question, and obviously I didn't share that in the video. So I wanted to make sure I filled you all in on that with all the details. Now I'm going to take this little scrap of fabric away, and I'm going to introduce a new crotch shape. Now, let's just compare these two crotch shapes. I don't know if we can see them both on video here, but basically you can see there's not a significant difference in the shapes. It's just on the one that I'm going to share today, the base of the back crotch curve is a little bit lower. All right, so this would be more of a low butt situation. So what I want to do here is show you what happens. So in this case, let's take a look and see what happens with this now. In some situations, and again, remember, this is going to depend on the shape of the pattern you're working with. Every crotch curve on a paper pattern is going to vary slightly, you know, from brand to brand, indie designer to indie designer. So you never know what the crotch is going to look like until you get it out and start working with it. But in the case of a low butt situation, and we're working with a more slender fitting leg now, not a wide leg pant, sometimes what happens is you can pull it up all the way in the front without messing up the back view. However, you end up with a wedgie in the back because the curve of your butt is lower than the pattern is allowing it to go. So that's when I would say, where is the basement on the pattern or the muslin? It's right here. This is the basement. It's the fabric trapped underneath the floor of the crotch. So you can see in this case, I can pull it up all the way in front, but in back, the curve of the butt would be pulling it down. Now here's an interesting thing. I'm working on another project during FabFit Friday, making tops on the bias, and I've become very acquainted with a wrinkled up mess that I'm getting like right here on the base of my front armhole, because this little fatty part of me is pushing the armhole down on some of my tops, and it's creating all of these wrinkles along the curve. So when I take my shirt off that I'm working on and lay it flat, I can see the stress of where my body wants to make a deeper hole. So here's the good news. If you're fitting your muslin and you have it on, and here's the thing, remember, as you're working and you start to achieve some success, meaning you're happy with the way the leg is draped on the waistband, add some pins so you don't lose your work. Take it off like pants so you're not losing your work and the position of the waistline along the waistband is staying put. So you can see if you take off your single leg muslin and you've got wrinkles around here, that's going to tell you exactly where you need a deeper hole. All right, so when you take off your single leg muslin and you're looking at it and you see these stress wrinkles over in the back crotch curve, you know you need a deeper hole there. So basically, instead of filling in the front like we did last week, we're actually going to scoop out of the back. Now, you don't want to just scoop like this. So you see the wrinkles were right here. You don't want to just do something like this, right? Because that's going to be a weird fit. That's not going to improve anything. You want to lower the base of the crotch curve so it agrees with you. One of the hardest things I notice students have with doing this type of adjustment is redrawing the crotch curve so it's actually going to benefit, you know, the fit, instead of drawing something like this, which would create a whole new set of problems. And by the way, I think that's one of the reasons why scooping gets a bad reputation. People scoop and they end up with worse results or having to fix 14 other things. And partially the reason why that can happen is because you're doing little scoops like this, which, yes, that's making a deeper hole, but it's also shortening or reducing your horizontal space. Now, what do I mean by horizontal space? You can see here, if I draw straight down like this and straight down like this, and I'm just following the sort of the angle of the crotch there. I'm talking about the horizontal space from front to back like this. Okay, so this is your horizontal space. And if you just draw a little scoop, it can reduce that space and make it more of a U. So what we want to do is we want to sort of figure out how much we need to scoop out, and if you've got some pretty wicked wrinkles here, you can pinch them out. You can use that as a guide. So like I would say that that's about 3/8 of an inch here. Or if you don't have wrinkles or you can't measure the wrinkles, you know, between 1/4 to 1/2 an inch is a good place to start. The best part about lowering the base of the crotch curve is that you can do it in small steps. So lower it a little bit and see if that works, and then lower it a little bit more and see if that works. So basically what you're going to do on your fit muslin, move the pattern out of the way, is you're going to start, and I'm just going to use a different color here. Let's use purple. So you're going to, instead of scooping over here in the area that you think you need it, you're going to start up here. Okay, and you're going to come down very similarly to this green line I drew, and you're just going to come past it until you are about as far away as you want to lower or scoop the back crotch. Once I've gone there, then I can come in, I'm just going to turn it like this, and I'm just going to mirror or sort of copy the shape of the curve I have. So you can see this would be a nice scoop, because you can see it's very gradual and it's just removing that little bit of fabric, and so we're digging into that basement. We're going into the basement. Now, to test it on a single leg muslin, what I would do is I would get your ruler out, re-establish your 1/2 inch. So I'm just going to, as I veer away, I'm going to start marking it like this. So you can see, in this case, we're just doing a very little bit. And you can see, by the time I get to the inseam, I'm back to normal. And then what I'm going to do is I'm literally going to cut this little bit off. Okay, and then I'm going to try it back on my pattern, or you're going to try it back on your body. But so let's pretend we're trying it back on our body now. So we can see now I can pull it up in the front, and it's also matching in the back because we just lowered it that little bit. Now notice I just lowered it a little bit, like a 1/4. You always want to guess a minimal amount, because if it's not enough, you can trim a little bit more off. If you trim off too much, you can't put it back. So this gives me a much better fit. Okay, and when you're wearing it, look in your 2-mirror system and make sure you can fine-tune anything from the waist that you may need to do, because sometimes when you lower the curve, it can affect what's happening at the waist as well. So just double check everything to make sure that this was the correct adjustment. But notice the most important takeaway for this is less is more. Okay, when you're going into the basement, go down small steps. All right, so let me show you a way that you can transfer this to your paper pattern without having to redraw that crotch shape, because that's really hard for students sometimes. So let me get my pattern pieces here. This is a new set of pattern pieces, and I do want to tell you I'm very sad because I ripped the back leg right off this little part here and I couldn't find it, so I had to throw away my initial sample, so I couldn't remind you how to fill in the curve today, but I'll be careful with this one. So what we're going to do now, in this case, I did not involve the front at all. I just lowered the back that little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm just not going to worry about the front right now. I'm going to draw the same sort of guideline that I drew on my muslin, except this time I'm going to use the edge of the fabric, not the stitching line. Okay, so then I'm just going to come right over like this, and I'm basically going to cut this out. And before I cut it out, I'm going to go ahead and give myself the guide of where I want to move it. So remember, I did like a scant quarter. So let's just mark this line right here. And then as I got back to the inseam, I was back to normal. So something like that is actually what I did. So I'm going to cut this out. And actually, I can make a pivot at my inseam because we're not touching the inseam. And all I'm going to do is take this little piece that I cut out, and I'm literally just going to slide it down till it covers my guideline like this. Okay, and now you can see all we've done here is lower the back of the crotch curve into the basement just a little bit. All right, and see, the cool thing is I didn't have to redraw anything. I just used a pivot at the inseam and just push that down a little bit. Don't worry about this part over here that's overlapping. Don't worry about that. Now I'm going to put these back together. You want to always make sure that your transition front to back works out. Sometimes when you lower the very back of the crotch curve, you're changing the angle of your horizontal space. It's reaching down now, so you may need to actually just skim a little bit off of the front going into the back like this, just so you have a nice smooth transition. Let me just tape this a little bit better here. All right, so now notice what I have here, just this little bit, because I want it to be a straight transition. A crotch curve that is shaped for an average shape is coming in almost horizontal to the floor. You need it to tip down just a little bit to reach down to our new lower position here. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm literally just going to trim this off that little bit. And see, they're teeny little pieces, but you can see now I have a really nice transition front to back. I'm going to put my fabric here so you can see it a little bit nicer. All right, so see how that has a nice front to back. It isn't peeking up like this, right? It's a nice smooth transition front to back, and we've made it a little bit lower into the basement to accommodate our shape. So I'm going to do what I did last week. I'm going to pin it together at a 1/2 inch, and then we'll just put it onto our crotch shape. Okay, so now you can see that that is going to fit so much nicer now that we gave it that little amount of room in the back. All right, so that's how you deal with fitting your leg if the front is hanging properly and it's in position and your leg looks good, except you need a little bit deeper of a hole in the back and you need to go into the basement. Remember, small steps. Start with a quarter, or if you pinched out the stress wrinkles on that back curve, guesstimate down slightly, because you can always lower it some more. So small steps, and I think that will help you get a great fit on your pants. I do want to mention, sometimes you might not notice that you need to do that until you get into the 2-leg muslin, and that's okay. You can do the same exact thing by putting one leg inside the other so you can see the U shape, and then stitch down that little bit deeper as I showed in this video to get the same results. So don't worry if you realize later on in the fitting process that you need to make a deeper hole or a deeper curve in the back. Tomorrow during subscriber Q&A, I'm answering the question how to add a pleat to the Sorsha Classic Slim trousers, and I'm going to show you how to match plaids. So that's what we're going to be doing tomorrow. I'm super excited about that. And then later on Friday, we're going to be continuing on with the bias V-neck top sew along. And I'm hoping by then I will have my dress in some sort of order so I can show you how that's working, and my finished or my fitted armhole so I don't get the wrinkles I was getting over here. So it's going to be a fun week, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me, and have a lovely rest of your day.